Hey everybody, Dr. Whitney here, and welcome to spooky season. This week we're going to travel down spooky corridors and creepy hallways of an abandoned hospital or asylum, whichever one you want it to be. Not only that, but we're going to make this a collapsible diorama for easy storage. And I'm going to incorporate an older project into today's diorama as well. So let's get started. So let's get into this. So here are the base products that I'm going to be using today. Some of these came out of a recent stash that I purchased. One of those being this floor, which to me looks like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And it looks like it was probably used in a previous project. You can see in the back has some glue remnants and it's stuck to a piece of what looks like a wax paper. Has some issues and some damage, so I thought it'd be perfect for today's project. And then also in the stash came these windows that are already covered in dirt and grime, which is perfect for the project that we're going to be working on today. They are working windows, I believe. They're stuck though, and that's probably because of the paint that was put over them, which again, perfect for today's project. One is missing the corner of the windowsill, broken. Perfect. The other item I'm going to be using today is this foam board, and these are just leftover remnants from other projects that I've done. Thought this was a good time to use up some of those pieces. Because of the window thickness, I will be probably needing to do 2 to 3 layers of foam board to accommodate for the windows, which is fine because I do have enough leftover foam board pieces, which is great. The foam board I'll be using today did come from the dollar store. So once I've cut everything down and glued the pieces together, you can see here that I am just going to be doing a 2-wall diorama. The other thing about this project today, I've taped it on the corners here because what I want to do is make this a collapsible diorama, meaning that I can just completely take it apart and lay it flat for storage purposes. I love the idea of this because, once you get going here, space is always a concern. This will be great to be able to just take it apart, store it away, and then pull it out every year. One of the techniques I'll be featuring today is a very cool technique where you can make it look like the paint is just peeling off of the wall. Now, I love a lot of ghost adventures and ghost hunting shows, and they often go into these old asylums and hospitals to do their ghost hunting, which I completely love. One of the reasons I love to watch those shows is because I really like the look of these abandoned places. Most of them are in areas where it was quite hot, and the elements, of course, have taken over, but extreme heat does make the paint peel. You can see in these photos, these are my inspiration photos, a lot of paint peeling happening here. And so this is the look that I'm going for, and I'm going to show you how to do it today. Now, for this technique, I don't recommend doing it straight on foam board because it will peel up the foam board and then you'll get a totally different look, a look that you won't be satisfied with. I'm going to be putting it on this chipboard here that I have. You could put it directly on wood and other materials. I'm going to, of course, have one piece on each side to cover those foam board walls completely. Now that I've got the material I'm going to use, I'm going to take some brown paint and some orange or rust colored paint, and I'm going to do a very sloppy coat of brown paint. I'm going to go in all different directions because it really doesn't matter, and I really want, this is going to be the undercoat, and I really do want it to look kind of messy under there, even though you're only going to see a little bit at a time, but you'll see in the end what I'm talking about. Then while that brown paint is still wet, I'm going to slop on some of that orange rust color paint just in different areas, and then I'll blend that in as well. And then once that's completed, I'm going to go and take my hairdryer and I'm going to dry that. Now, the next step is to take some liquid latex. There are several different kinds of liquid latex out there. I have this kind, which is pretty watery, so it's going to take me several coats, but you can always get a thicker liquid latex for this technique. Now, I'm just blotting it on with a cotton ball. I'm blotting it because I'm looking for a texture. You can also wipe it on. The thing about liquid latex, generally a lot of Halloween props are made with this, like for your face even, liquid latex to make it look like you have wounds. You can use gloves when using this if you want to. It comes off your skin pretty easy, almost like Elmer's glue does when you rub it off, so it kind of has that same feeling. But anyway, I'm putting it on as thick as I can because it is such a watery product, and then I'm hair drying it between coats, and ultimately it's going to take, for what I'm doing, about 3 coats. If I had a thicker liquid latex, it could take less coats, but it just really depends on what you want it to look like in the end. Now you can see here, this is what it looks like wet, and then this is pretty much what it looks like dry. There's a few areas there still wet, and I'll go back over that with a hair dryer. And then the next step that I did was I did a 1 complete coat of latex paint. Now you could buy latex paint, pretty much anywhere. I had an extra can of latex paint in my garage because typically latex paint is what you use to paint your house. And then once the latex paint goes on in any color, you can then put an acrylic paint on top of it and you'll still get the same effect. So that's what I'm going to do because I want the top to be this color. That's fine. I don't mind it being that cream. But for the bottom, I do want to add in like a greenish color, greenish blue color like we saw in those pictures. And so what I'm going to use is this color called Key West, which is actually a very gorgeous color. It's funny because it's very beachy, but it can also be used in this abandoned project. Of course, for hospitals, they do use colors like this quite often. So I'm going to go ahead and put a nice thick layer of that acrylic paint right on top of my latex paint. And then go ahead, of course, and let that dry. And I did use a hair dryer to dry that also just for the purpose of quickness. And so now for the fun part. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a razor blade and also a pair of tweezers. And I'm just scratching over my latex paint. And you can see here they're already starting to come off. And I'm going in all sorts of different directions because I really do not want a pattern here at all. I really need it to look very random and organic in the way that the paint has started to peel off the wall. And what's really hard to see on camera are all the little paint flecks that are coming off and also the texture now of this wall. I don't want to lose those paint flecks and I don't want to lose that texture. So I'm being really careful not to allow that to fall off, if that makes sense, because I do want a lot of that to stay on. So the way that I'm going to make sure that it stays on is you can do two things. You can just a quick spray glue over it, take it outside and just do a quick spray glue over it and that'll hold everything in place. So that way when you put your wall up, none of that falls off and you get that really textured look. I'm actually out of my spray glue, so I'm going to use this acrylic medium matte gel, and matte is also key in this case because I don't want this to be really shiny. And I'm just going to do a little coat over that, and that's going to keep all my little flecks in place and everything. So that's going to be nice and textured. Now I am going to put a little bit of the flecks onto my flooring because I do want some of those colors and some of the flecks of paint to be on the floor so that it looks like it came off and has kind of gathered on the floor and it kind of looks messy. But we're going to really work on that floor here in a little bit anyway. So I'm going to add that, and then with the rest, I'll just go ahead and put some of that matte gel over, and then I'll let that dry. And basically here you have my 2 sheets now, and then you can kind of see I'll pop them up really quickly. And so we can take a look now at the effect kind of up close. And again, hard to see in the pics, but really there's a lot of good texture here, and it really does look like a peeled paint. I've gone ahead and cut them down now and glued them onto the foam board. All right, so the project is really coming along. Now I do want to work on the outside first before we start working on the flooring and some of the other details of the room. Now, when I really looked at the old hospitals or old asylums, that sort of thing, I did see a ton of brickwork, but I've done a lot of brickwork lately, and I'm just kind of not wanting to do a brick technique again. So I'm just going to do a random stone look. A lot of the hospitals did have the random stone, and so that's what I'll do here. All right, so pretty easy first. You can see I have the tape there. So there's the inside interior paint wall, and then the outside is just the foam board. In this case, I'm just gonna rip off the paper that's on the foam board. Again, this stuff is from the Dollar Tree, and so it's a pretty easy paper removal. And then once I have that removed, you can see the center foam core of the foam board. And basically, I'm taking my pencil and a ruler, and I'm just going to start making a random stone design where I've got large stones, small stones, square, rectangle, and I'm just going for it. Sometimes I'm using a ruler and sometimes I'm not. I think the unevenness sometimes actually plays a role in making it look a little bit more realistic. And basically you can see there on the screen what that was going to look like on both sides. So at least the outside will have some details to it. Next, I'm just taking my black acrylic paint and I'm going through all the grooves that I just created with my pencil and filling those in. The next thing I'll do is I'll take some different types of gray tones, and at first I was using my paintbrush. Honestly, I didn't really like the aesthetic that it was giving off. It was much easier just to grab like a cotton ball or a sponge and go ahead and blot the paint on. It actually looked better and took less time. And now I want to add in a couple other little highlights using some lighter colors and lattes and light browns, giving the stone, of course, a little bit more dimension. Now for the next part, what I did was I took a little bit more chipboard and I cut it down to make it look as though it was a brick corner. And then what I'll do is on the interior of the brick corner and on the two corners of my stone walls, I will be adding in some small magnets. So I'm just creating small holes with my tweezers, and then I'm using some super glue to glue in the magnets. And then once that is dry, I can take my brick corner now and just basically clip them right into place. And then that's going to hold those two walls together. And then of course, once I'm done using the diorama for the Halloween season, I'll just take it off and then I can pack them away, and I'll show you that at the end of the video. Okay, and back to the interior. So of course I need to go ahead and paint the trim of those windows. I'm just going with a nice sand color, and I'm just doing one coat, and I'm not even concerning myself as to whether or not I get all the wood. In fact, I want some of it to show. Now I'm going to just dust off my little paint flakes that I saved from later. I'm just going to put those to the side. And then again, because this is going to be a diorama that's going to be taken apart at the end of the season, I do want to make sure that everything that's on the floor is glued down, so that when it's in storage, I could just pull it out every year and everything's kind of already good to go. So I am taking my white ultimate glue. I'm going to smear a whole bunch all over this flooring. I'm going to add my paint speckles and dust back onto the wood, and then I'm going to take a little bit of my Fuller's Earth and I'm going to go ahead and dust a whole bunch of that right on top of my glue. I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to dust off the excess Fuller's clay, and then here's what we've got so far. So that's not quite dry yet. So I'm going to move on to the next thing that I want to do here, which is add a couple cool details to the wall. So I think that it would be fun to add maybe a couple electrical plugs, like one in between the windows. I think I want to add one up high on the wall that maybe was for medical equipment or something like that. And then I do want to add a vent to the top also, just for an add a little touch of spooky. So I'm going to use some of my chipboard to do that. The first thing though, for the electrical plug between the two windows, I cut out a little rectangle with my X-Acto knife so that it could have some dimension, some 3D, so it can look more realistic. And I'm going to paint the interior of that black. And for the vent and for the electrical outlet and cover, I basically just took my pencil and I just drew on the details. And so for the vent, I'm just going to put it kind of up high up here. And then I painted it with some creams and some browns, and then I want to detail it out and make it look like water or rust stains are coming out of that vent. So I'm just using a little rust and a little brown to create that effect. All right, so for the outlet, I put the interior portion of the outlet inside because I do want to make this outlet look like it's been broken or punched in a little bit. So the outlet, the actual plugs are to the interior of it, so it's just sitting in there broken, kind of to the side. And then I clipped off one of the corners of the outlet cover, and I'm just going to glue that kind of crooked sitting there. And then the other plug, I just glued up high above the blue on the opposite wall, and I kind of turned it to the side so it just looks like it's just sitting there. And then what I also wanted to do is add a spooky detail, another spooky detail of maybe a handprint on the window. All right, and then let's take some close-up look at those added details. Okay, now I talked about the store Daiso, which is a Japanese dollar store, and I know that not everybody has those near where you live. I don't even have one near where I live. I have to go way out of town. But anyway, the last time I did go, I noticed that they had several miniatures. So if you are near one, definitely check them out. They do have very inexpensive dollar store miniatures. And one of those that I found was this bed, and it is made of plastic. Of course, it's white. It does look like a medical bed. I mean, you could paint this anything really. It does come with a plastic mattress, which I will not be using today, but that might show up in some other projects some other day. Again, it's plastic. It's super easy to assemble. And of course, I thought this was going to be perfect for this project. When I bought it, I didn't really know what I wanted to use it for, but so it goes. You buy these things and you just put them in your stash and you're like, someday I'll use it. So today's the day. Anyway, I want to paint it black. I saw this picture of this one right here and I was like, oh man, that's pretty cool. And let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to spray paint it in a black matte finish. And of course, once that's dry, we've got this this look right here, which is way too new and way too clean. So I'm going to take my Fuller's Earth again, and I'm just going to dip my finger in it. I'm just going to rub over that paint with my dust, and it will immediately start to look older just the minute that goes on. Really, I usually always overdo it with the Fullers, and then I just take my dusting brush and I just go over it, and then that'll give you a much better look. All right, now let's really start getting into some of these fun details. So again, I take my ultimate glue, and since that one window is opened, I would really like to make it look like we're having an issue where, of course, some of the outside has come inside. And of course, I love to use my flocking, and so I'm going to use my dark green flocking. I'm just adding in my glue, and then I'm just going to dust it with some of my dark green flocking to make it look like leaves or mold or something like that is really kind of starting to overtake this room. I always like to say nature is reclaiming itself here. And I'm also going to add a lot of glue to the one corner of the bed, the portion of the bed that's the closest to the window, so that mold has begun to travel and gone up onto the bed as well. So we will go ahead and add some more flocking right there. And I am, of course, flocking over my flooring because I do want some of that mold to end up there too. So that's just working out really nicely for me. All right, next product. So I've used this in a couple of Halloween projects, but this is just some old decorative Spanish moss that I found at a garage sale for $2. And it's such a huge bag. I've been able to use it for years. Different project. So I'm just going to take out a little bit. I'm going to break it up, and then I'm going to take my scissors and cut it down to a little bit smaller pieces. And then I'm going to start gluing it around the room. So of course, I think obviously it's coming through the window. That makes sense to me. And then I want to really edge out the room with it also and put it in some of the corners. And of course, I'm gluing everything down, like I said, because once the room gets taken apart, I just want all of this to be sitting, glued, ready to go for next year. All right, I'm going to add a little bit to the bed also. All right, now one of my many friends and viewers, Carol, she sent me a nice box of all of these really great different little random miniatures. And one of the items that came in was these blue cloths. And I thought that it would be really fun if we kind of made these really spooky, because it is an asylum or it is a hospital, whichever one I'm going with. It's kind of a little bit of both, I think. I feel like maybe something happened here. I want to show that maybe something happened. And so I really want these cloths to be gross. So I'm going to use some barn red, and I'm just going to take my finger, talk about nice technique. And I'm just going to rub some of that barn red, just really smear it all in, because this will give the look of maybe more of a dried blood on these cloths, which is what I want to do. And then what I'll take is my fabric stiffener, and I'm going to really spray that all over this. I'm going to wad them up nice and tight, and then I'm going to glue them down to the floor in some random places. So I think kind of near the bed would be a good spot, and then I'll do one on the other side of the bed as well. So we don't know what happened here, but something bad. So I have two of those, so I'm going to do that in those two places. All right, so Carol also sent me this little bag of spider webs, and I thought, of course this room needs spider webs. So I'm going to add just a little bit over both of the windows, and I got a little glue on my hands when I was adding this. It was almost impossible then to maneuver or to manipulate those spider webs, so I had to definitely wash my hands in between and make sure there was no glue. Oh, the challenges. And then I want to add a little bit of spider webs to the bed also. So I'll put some right down here at the base of the bed or at the footboard. All right. Now, last year or the year before, I can't even remember now, I modified a wheelchair and I made it look really old and gross. And then I also took a skeleton and we did make him look like he was a hospital type skeleton in a hospital gown. We added some rotting flesh to him and all sorts of stuff. So I want to use him in this diorama. I think he's perfect for it, or she, we don't really know. But we can add my little skeleton, and then I do want to make it a little bit more scary. I saw this picture and it was a Halloween prop Facebook page, and they had the skeleton, but they put hair on it, and the hair was kind of like toward the front of the face. So it really had this very intense, like spooky, like what's behind the curtain kind of feel, you know, like, ugh, we don't want to know, but we kind of want to know. And I thought that I would do that with our skeleton this year. So I want to add a little bit more to the skeleton. So I have these hair wefts. These are doll hair wefts. And I'm going to just take a little bit, because honestly, a little goes a long way. I'm going to go ahead and take some of my ultimate white glue. I'll put some on the skeleton skull. And I'm just going to start adding some wefts here. I want to put some in the front where we've got a little peek through so we can see the skull face, but I think it really adds to, you know, the spookiness and of course the rotting of the skull, right? So I think it adds a lot of spookiness because now we can't really see. And then I added a little bit of glue to the hair also, to the front strands to give it more of a matted hair look, which was difficult because it kept wanting to come off onto my fingers. But anyway, I think overall the effect looks really good. And of course, I'm making sure that the skeleton is close to the window, so maybe that gives us the idea, or maybe it leads us to believe that the handprint belongs to this forgotten patient. The other thing I have are these rats. Now these are Limax rats, so they come with a little base on them already. So in order to kind of hide that, I will put a little bit more of my mold around them and maybe some of that Spanish moss. We'll put one at the base of the skeleton. I think that's pretty creepy. And then we'll put one underneath the bed also. All right, you guys. So this is with my regular lighting. You guys can see a lot of the details here. And then what we'll do is we'll move over to a little bit more theatrical lighting. This is definitely not something that I would want to come up on if I was exploring an abandoned hospital or asylum. It's just super creepo. One of the things also that I did add, I went back to the outside with the stone. I added some mold and moss in between the stones, and I did add a little bit more Spanish moss into the windowsills to the outside, which I think added, you know, a little bit to the outside, even though really the focus won't be on it at all. So that's it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the paint peeling technique. Super fun and really great for, I mean, you could do, of course, Halloween projects and abandoned projects, but it would also look good like in an old garage or something like that, or even like an old attic. That technique would work there as well. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you guys are excited for spooky season. I have a lot more coming over the next couple months, of course. If you liked it, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Give me a thumbs up. That definitely helps the channel. Share the project, share the ideas with your friends. If you want to share this video, I'd love for you to do that also. I know for the rest of the weekend, I'll be starting to put up my Halloween decorations. Usually I never do that till the 1st of October, but I don't know, I'm kind of feeling it early this year. How about you? Let me know in the comments also. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so you don't miss any future content. And don't forget to push notifications so you will know the moment that the new videos are released. Have a great rest of your weekend, you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!